Hello and welcome to episode 71 of This Week in Germany. We'll be bringing the world to Germany and Germany to the world with news for the week beginning the 11th of May 2015. My name's Daniel.
And I am Felix, standing in for Rob. Each week we feature stories from news, society and culture in the English language. If you want to find out more, including ways to follow us on Facebook and Twitter, head over to thisweekingermany.de.
Yes, it's time for episode 71, and as you heard in that intro, Felix is joining me once again, filling in for Rob. Hello, Felix.
Hello, Daniel.
But Felix, where's Rob? For those who weren't listening last week, where's Rob gone?
Rob is still on vacation in the US. I'm sure he's visiting his family. Well, definitely he's home, so him being from the US.
Yeah, so you're joining us this week and next week to fill in for Rob, and it is an absolute pleasure to have you on the program, especially to have a real live German on the program.
Well, thanks so much. Not so difficult to find in Berlin, Daniel, isn't it?
Well, I don't know. There are a lot of tech hipsters around here that don't speak a word of German, but still. So, coming up on the program today, we have lots of interesting things to talk about, don't we, Felix? What are we going to be talking about in the program?
Oh, we'll be talking about, well, the top story. Let me just go straight there. We'll be talking about the 70th anniversary of the end of the Second World War and how, just reflect on it a bit. And I think you had an interview.
Yes, an interview with Peter Littger, who is an author and a columnist for Der Spiegel, who's going to be talking to us about the German experience of learning English. And then for Destination Germany, we're going to have a special guest. Spoiler alert, it's Rob, who's going to be telling us about Potsdam's Dutch Quarter, which is absolutely fascinating, well worth a listen. And then, Felix, you're going to do your German of the Week.
Exactly, and this week it's actually one of our honorary Germans, since he's actually British, right? It's Sir Simon Rattle. He is the head conductor. Is that the correct term in English?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, cool. He's the head conductor of the Berliner Philharmonics. And he is, leaving the Berliner Philharmonics. And on Monday, May 11th, his
successor will be nominated. Yes, so all that's still to come on this episode of This Week in Germany. It was important for me on the occasion of the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II to commemorate those who died. I laid a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier. With that, I'd like to say to the Russian people that as German Chancellor, I bow down to the millions of victims of German National Socialism.
70 years ago, the most widespread war in history ended in Europe. Over 30 countries were involved in World War II and unjustifiable atrocities occurred. This past weekend is marked worldwide by many countries not just as a day of celebration, but as a lesson by history.
Yes, 70 years this week. Let's just give a bit of context to the Second World War. When did the actual war in Europe start officially?
It started on September 1st in 1939 with the German invasion of Poland. This is seen as the initial aggression that started the Second World War.
I think in total over 50 million people died as a result of this war. How did it come to its end?
Most fighting actually stopped in 44 already, in late 44, by the invasion of German occupied France and Italy, mostly led by the Allied forces. So they made their way ever closer to Berlin. It didn't take much longer for Berlin to finally be captured by the Russians and the Americans.
The Soviets finally reached Berlin on April the 21st, and the fate of Hitler was sealed, and he ended up killing himself. That was on April the 30th in 1945. And then the actual surrender, what happened there? There was more than one surrender, I think you've mentioned to me.
There is, yeah, and people actually don't know about it. The first surrender happened in France, not even in Berlin. It was on May 7th in Rheims, where the Germans surrendered unconditionally, and the whole process was repeated in Berlin on May 8th,
at Berlin-Karlshorst, where you can visit this place now. It's the German-Russian Museum in Berlin-Karlshorst.
But that wasn't when the entire war ended. That actually happened later in September, because it was Japan that didn't surrender yet. And as we know, it took the horrific dropping of the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki that finally made the Japanese surrender.
Now, 70 years on, how are we commemorating the anniversary of the end of the war in Europe?
Well, this year's commemoration was marked by a visit of Angela Merkel together with Russian President Vladimir Putin, where they laid a wreath at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier in Moscow, which is a Second World War memorial in Moscow, a very important one. So yeah, she was there.
And there were also demonstrations and meetups of all kind in Berlin, and there people demonstrated for peace and also took the chance to remember what happened 70 years ago. And Felix, I believe that it also has a personal dimension for you.
It does. And I think, I know from other German families that the whole issue with the Second World War is not so much talked about. In fact, my grandfather he's actually the father of my stepfather. He was Oberstleutnant in the Second World War. He was actually, he was born in 1915, and he was 30 years old when the war ended.
What happened to him?
Well, first of all, it's not such a big topic. People just don't talk about it. But what happened to him was that in 1945, on May 8th, he was basically stuck in the Czech Republic. He wasn't a prisoner of war, so he, when the war's over, what do? You just go home, right? So he tried to find his way home, and he was together with one other soldier. And they threw away their military jackets that they had, right, and the helmets. You don't wear those clothes anymore. But they kept their warm boots that they, warm and sturdy boots. And it turned out that in this one village, civilians recognized the Germans by their boots, and they tried to chase them, and they would run into a barn. And all that I know is that apparently he said to his friend, look at us, we have one gun left with 8 rounds, and if I go, or if we go, we take, we have 8 rounds. So I don't know what happened then, because he apparently didn't share this to my stepfather, but he made it to Berlin somehow. I don't know. It's a touchy topic.
It seems that there must be a lot of personal stories among German families, but not many people talk about them so openly. There's a lot of there's a heavy cloud which hangs over a lot of people when it comes to talking about this time. It is,
yeah. And I actually know another story, real briefly, where my father, he was, stepfather again, he was born in 1943, and he remembers in the late 1940s, he was like, I don't know, 5, 6 years old. There was this uncle, and my stepfather's like 5 or 6, and this uncle has been gone for years, but he somehow remembered him. And then he saw this vagabond with ripped clothes, dirty, almost a dying man, walking in Berlin towards their house. And he immediately knew, oh my God, it's Uncle so-and-so. I don't know his name here, but it's Uncle so-and-so. And he would not talk at all about what happened. He just made it home.
And I guess because it's so difficult for families to discuss these kinds of things, that's why we have public commemorations, in order to keep the memory of those times alive and to ensure it doesn't happen again. But now let's move on to other news from this week in our News in Brief. The SPD has put pressure on their coalition partners to publish details on Germany's spying scandal. It was recently reported that the Foreign Intelligence Service helped the USA to spy on France. Sigmar Gabriel, SPD's leader and economy minister, said Chancellor Angela Merkel assured him there was no industrial espionage carried out on plane manufacturer Airbus. Mentioning this publicly drew a red line. If further leaks show otherwise, she will have been exposed as either a liar or out of control of her own chancellery. Also this week, former CDU Minister Ronald Pofalla was accused of lying during an election campaign. He publicly touted a no-spy deal with the USA, despite the fact that Karen Donfried, Obama's chief Europe strategist, ruled out such a deal in emails to the German government. The SPD's deputy leader said the public had been deceived. The Social Democrats have a good reason to put pressure on their partners in government. Their popularity is languishing at 15 percentage points lower than the CDU-CSU political union, which are at 40% approval rating. Put simply, the SPD have to prove their worth. A survey by news magazine Der Spiegel revealed that a third of Germans believe the spying affair has damaged the Chancellor's credibility. Not quite the Iron Lady, Merkel has been described as the Teflon Chancellor for her ability to avoid getting wrapped up in controversies. As details over the spying scandal unravel, many are asking what spying she oversaw. Saying that she was unaware of some controversial intelligence operations is an excuse which will only work for so long. It was the longest rail strike in German history, but after 6 days of action by the train drivers' union GDL, what was achieved? Despite the threat of paralysing the country, the strike did less damage than was first thought. Deutsche Bahn, the national rail operator, managed to run almost two-thirds of their usual service. Fewer GDL members went on strike than expected. The union was criticised for forcing their income dispute with Deutsche Bahn to affect millions of passengers and thousands of businesses. After 20 years of service, a train driver can expect to receive €1,700 after taxes. This was the 8th strike in the dispute. With an impact lesser than expected, it is difficult to see how Deutsche Bahn, a company with an operating profit of almost €2 billion, will react. Will they continue to dig in, or relent to pay and hours demands of the train drivers? And that's this week's News in Brief. Do you fancy getting a bi-weekly update from us with the best of This Week in Germany? Sign up to our email newsletter in the sidebar at thisweekingermany.de. In his book The Devil Lies in the Detail, Lustiges und Lehrreiches über unsere Lieblingsfremdsprache, Peter Littger wrote about his experiences learning and improving his English, and how easy it is to get wrong. To talk about his experiences with English made in Germany, he joins me now on the line from Berlin. Peter, can you start by telling us a little about your book?
Well, of course, the main intention with this book is to be honest about our English, which is probably very good most of the time, but sometimes perhaps not good enough. And my intention really was to show common slips, the difficulties that we have. And when I say we, by we, I mean I have myself. It's filled with 500 typical mistakes that I probably did myself sometimes, but that I've overheard many times, and that I think should be addressed.
So I think that the great thing about English is that it's very widely spoken, and so to learn a bit of English can be fairly easy, or to at least practice it, but getting to the very details and to the high-level English can be extremely difficult. So, first of all, if you could just tell me what your experience of learning English is, because your English sounds very good.
Well, thank you, but I do know what I don't know, and the point in English is that it is very easy to make mistakes and to get it wrong, to fabricate misunderstandings.
But I mean, everyone's going to make some mistakes in English. I mean, even English speakers themselves don't necessarily say everything perfectly. But you have experience from living in England, right?
That is true. The striking sort of difference, or one danger really lies sits in the fact that we, as probably in every region of the world, have developed in Germany, have developed a particular form of English that doesn't exist in your country, that sounds English but isn't English, and that we transcend and very often use when we speak English. For example, we use, made-up terms such as home story. A journalist would ask an English actor to do a home story, and the actor then doesn't know what he means. A German television presenter would ask an English football player to come for the shake hands, and he doesn't really know what that means, has an idea perhaps, but there are other words such as polunder, as we call it, or the spleen that we use as to describe somebody as being eccentric or having a tic. Whereas in your language, in the original language, it's just a human organ. Yeah.
Yeah. There's lots of these very strange trends. Well, I don't know how you just transfers. I would say taking something which does exist in English and corrupting it and making it something different. Do you have any idea? I mean, maybe you don't. I don't know why. Why German loves to play with these English words to make them into something new, rather than just inventing a German word for it.
Well, at the same time, I can immediately think of many examples in English that where you use German words, and then, of course, one could ask the same question: why do you say Schwenkgrill, Bratwurst, and Brauhaus instead of using an English equivalent here? I think sometimes foreign words, loan words, are just short and sweet and just more precise. We have one example with the running gag that works pretty well, I guess, and it doesn't really work when you translate it as durchlaufender Witz, as Kermit did it in the first Muppet Show in German language. So sometimes the English words, Anglizismen as we call them, work really fine, and at the same time, of course, there is a spleen, a tic. Perhaps an exaggeration of using English words in German language, particularly amongst executives, people who speak a lot of English and who consider themselves being very mobile and international, cosmopolitan. They use English words, I think, too excessively, and sometimes could perhaps use German words instead.
Also, I think that we have to make a clear difference between Germans who are speaking English in an English conversation to other executives, to colleagues or whatever, and misusing some words and phrases because they've taken something which came through a corrupted loan word and put that into an English sentence, like you said, with shake hands. If someone were to say shake hands in an English sentence, then it wouldn't really make sense. And then also Denglish. So you've got a German sentence and you put English words in there because, I mean, I don't know whether Denglish is technically where you just put in an English word and that English word makes sense, it's just in the German sentence, or whether it is a word which has been changed from English. Like, Germans call a mobile phone a Handy, which comes from the English word handy, which obviously we don't use for a mobile phone in English. So where do you stand on Denglish specifically, rather than just the mistakes that Germans commonly make in speaking English sentences? Do you think that Denglish is good or bad, or can we not look at it that way? What do you think?
Well, I think there are different traditions, if you like, of Dinglish. There is a tradition of manipulated or corrupted English, as you called it. There is a tradition of, plain wrong English, and there is a tradition of ridiculed and sort of mock English, and that is something very particular in my generation. I should think where we had a specific a newspaper format, a column called Filzerbriefe in the Süddeutsche Zeitung in the 80s, where a deliberately wrong English was fabricated by the author, sounding something like, "How goes it you? You're on the Woodway."
What's this called? Is it English for Runaways or something like that?
Yeah, this kind of English runner. That is also called Dinglish. So it depends on how you understand Dinglish and how you perhaps.
But would you say, is it good for the German language, or is it bad, or can we really judge it like that?
Well, it has. I mean, if you, it has a corrupting element, or it certainly is dangerous because when you speak it too much, and when you speak it without really knowing what is wrong or right, then you might end up using it in a real conversation. I think that it was a way of being playful and perhaps also trying to somehow answer, stand up or act up, if you can say that, against the sort of powerful Anglo-American sort of culture that we had experienced in Germany since Second World War, where American culture, English culture had become so normal, so commonplace, so sort of ever present in society, that perhaps it was a way of playing with it and saying, look, we can ridicule you a bit and we have fun with you, and so it was a pop cultural trend, perhaps, to have this sort of Otto Walkes, English for runaways. I think it is very important for us to distinguish between some form of English that is a joke and English that is commonly understood and comprehensive. And so my book, my intention for my book is really to point the finger to that difference and to basically name common slips and basically to make it easier for us to make this distinction, and be understood.
Author and columnist for Der Spiegel, Peter Littger, talking about English made in Germany. Thank you very much for talking to me here on This Week in Germany.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
And we have our next feature now, Felix. What's coming up?
Coming up right now, Destination Germany. Here we are taking you on a journey to somewhere in the country which is well worth a visit. Whether you're a tourist or a permanent resident, a foreigner or a German citizen, here we'll be covering the famous sites as well as the little-known corners of Deutschland. All that matters is showing you that Germany is an interesting and exciting place to visit. If you enjoy the destinations we talk about each week, check out our website at thisweekingermany.de. where we will have some photos of this week's destination as well.
And Rob joined us last week, which was very nice of him to join us, talking about the Technoseum in Mannheim in Baden-Württemberg. Now, it sounds like some crazy techno club, but it isn't. It's actually a museum focused on technology and industrialization. You can learn about the Industrial Revolution in Germany and what inventions took the country to where it is today, from public utilities to trains to robots. The Technoseum, it's really difficult to say, by the way, shows you how things work and even lets you try a lot of them out yourself with their interactive exhibits. But now we have a special guest on the program. Joining us is Rob. Hello, Rob.
Hello, everybody.
Oh, what a surprise. So, you may or may not know that we're recording this in advance, but still, it would be rude of me not to ask, how's your holiday going?
It's going even better than last week. Yes, we've had some delicious food. I've gotten to catch up with some family. Yeah, I'm having a great time. But I miss everyone in Germany.
Of course you do, and you are very good at faking things in advance. So now let's move on to explore this week's destination. What is it?
This week we're going to the northeast of the country, to the state of Brandenburg. The capital of Brandenburg is Potsdam, where we will find this week's destination. Not the entire city itself, as there are 1.5 million things to do there, but specifically the Dutch Quarter, which is centrally located in the city.
What exactly makes the Dutch Quarter of Potsdam the Dutch Quarter? Is this where going Dutch in the restaurants was being invented?
I don't know exactly, but there are quite a few restaurants, which I'll get into later, that you can go Dutch in. But Potsdam has been a major part of Germany for quite some time. During the early to mid-1700s, there was some urban expansion going on. The expansion was led by a Dutch architect together with the support of Frederick William I. They laid plans to construct new houses in this area. Frederick William unfortunately died before it was finished, but his son agreed to finish what they started.
And what was the outcome for their building project?
This Baroque city plan consisted of 4 square blocks equaling 134 brick buildings. If you've seen architecture in the Netherlands, you'll have some idea of what it looks like. It's actually the largest grouping of this style of architecture outside the Netherlands in all of Europe.
So you're actually telling us that this is like going to the Netherlands without actually leaving Germany?
Yeah, kind of. Now this area in Potsdam brings quite a lot of tourists who both want to see the architecture as well as experience the culture.
So if you're Dutch, then you can get the feeling of home without having to go to the Netherlands. What sort of unique culture will you find in the Dutch quarter of Potsdam? Is there anything Dutch about it apart from the architecture?
Well, besides having a lot of the residential houses, there are also a wide variety of different interests for the public to enjoy. There are many little boutique shops along the streets, as well as an assortment of art galleries. Also, many come for the food and drink.
Yeah, I like the sound of that.
Many restaurants and pubs have patio seating right on the street so guests can feel like they're right in the middle of everything. But, this being the Dutch style of housing, there are also a lot of little courtyard gardens to get a more intimate experience.
Sounds absolutely beautiful. And do you have any particular recommendations of a time of year to visit or anything like that? Or is it a year-round kind of place?
It really depends on if you like crowds or not. While popular, you shouldn't feel too overwhelmed with tourists most of the year, but there are some special festivals that bring in a lot of people. The Tulip Festival had been going on this month. The next major festival is going to be the Pottery and Ceramic Festival in September. And then, at the end of the year, the quarter is known for having an especially nice Dutch-themed Christmas market.
Absolutely beautiful. Rob, will you be joining us again next week?
I can't stay away. You couldn't pay me to stay away. In fact, you don't pay me at all.
That's right. I'm glad you said that because I'm not going to pay you anything. And because I'm not even paid myself. Well, I'll have a wonderful time and we'll see you next week.
Ciao. Thanks for joining us, Rob.
And finally on our program, it's time for our German of the Week section, where we put the spotlight on a prominent person from this week's news, a German citizen, or even a foreigner who we deem an honorary German, who has had an effect, for better or worse, on German culture, society, or politics.
Our German of the Week this week is Sir Simon Rattle. In fact, for a change, he's yet another honorary German we would like to present to you. For years, Sir Simon Rattle has been the principal conductor of the Berlin Philharmonic, or as they are called in German, Berliner Philharmoniker. After a long tenure, this Monday his successor will be announced. Nevertheless, it might still be time to look back at his life and work in Berlin. Born in Liverpool in 1955, the British conductor laid the foundation of his career in London. It's there that he entered the Royal Academy of Music in 1971. Only 3 years later, right before graduating, Rattle won the John Player International Conducting Competition. Directly after, he assumed the position of assistant conductor at the Bournemouth Symphony Orchestra. His time with the City of Birmingham Symphony Orchestra, from 1980 to 1998, drew him to the attention of critics and the public. It was in 1987 that he gained the infamous knighthood that bestowed him the title of Sir. His degree of Doctor of Music honoris causa of the University of Oxford in 1999 only added to his rising profile. Berlin was proud to be called his new home as of 2002. It was then when he assumed his current position as principal conductor of the Berlin Philharmonic. But it was not his first appearance. Rattle made his conducting debut with the Berlin Philharmonic in 1987, in a performance of Gustav Mahler's Symphony No. 6. His first concert as principal conductor in 2002 received rave reviews from the press worldwide. This time, it was Mahler's Symphony No. 5. During his time in Berlin, he not only managed to turn the institution into a foundation, with more control for its members, he also established its first education department. Even though he's not leaving Berlin quite yet, he sure may look forward to yet another of the great orchestras. As of 2017, he will be the director of the London Symphony Orchestra.
And that's it for this episode. This Week in Germany is produced by me, Daniel Winter. It is written, presented by myself, Felix Betzin, and Rob Bishop.
We'd also like to thank Peter Littger for joining us this week. He's the author of the book The Devil Lies in the Detail, which is available via his website, littger.com. You can also check him out on Twitter @FluentEnglish.
Thank you very much for listening. We'll be back next Monday with more of This Week in Germany.